Like to call to order our special city council meeting, September 25th, 2019, 8:18 p.m. Madam, roll call.
Mayor Ronnie Felder.
Here.
Chairperson Kashamba Miller Anderson.
Present.
Chair Pro Tem Julio Botel.
Here.
Councilperson Trodrick McCoy.
Here.
Councilperson Shirley Lanier.
Present.
Councilperson Douglas Lawson.
Here.
City Manager Jonathan Evans.
Present.
City Clerk Claudine Anthony is present. City Attorney Don Nguyen.
Here.
You may proceed.
All right, and we did the moment of silence in our pledge in our previous meeting this evening, so we will move on with the agenda. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Madam Clerk?
Comment.
Yes.
So I don't agree that we accept it because specifically, I only came expecting the interlocal agreement with the port and the housing authority. And it wasn't until late last night that I got the agenda that I see 2 additional items are added to the agenda. And if this is a specially called meeting, the meeting should only contain the items in which we notice. Now, we voted to put these items on a special city council meeting, and more particularly, the additional 2 items. And then not only that, it seems that the order is now changed. So somebody want to kind of give me some understanding on what's going on with this?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
The items that are before you this evening is consistent with the discussion that the board had at the September 18th meeting. When staff reviewed the tape, I believe it was Councilman Lawson that communicated his desire to talk about the items that will be discussed with the port and have a general overview and speak of strategy before the meeting that we have scheduled for September 30th. So the intent behind the items were just to provide you a brief recap of what the particular issue is and then to move through those issues pretty quickly.
So the storm drainage has what to do with the port?
I will explain that if the board proceeds forward with adopting the agenda.
Did you get the memo that was sent earlier today?
Well, memo from him about what it was.
There was a memo sent today outlining all of these items, but the stormwater goes along with the port.
No. So is that relative to the interlocal agreement?
That is separate from the interlocal agreement. The port has asked to discuss 3 items, which is the interlocal agreement, the stormwater drainage, and Peanut Island.
Okay. Well, it would be my recommendation that we take the housing authority first, because I asked several months ago if we can have this placed on the agenda, because the request has been coming in from the housing authority since we've taken office. Then we went through the transition of Ms. Hoskins almost a week after we left, then our interim, and then I even sent you an email, I believe it would have been back in latter part of July, asking if we could have this on our agenda. Some things happened, but I don't want to continue to.
So it's just a matter of you wanting to change the order?
Well,
You want it to go first?
Well, again, I never seen a memo today, so if it's something that came today, then I haven't seen it.
But the notice that was advertised, was it not in the same order, or was it in a different order as what's on the agenda?
Madam Chair, the order in which you see on the agenda is how it was ordered on the notice.
Right, but that came last night.
I'm not sure when it came.
It came yesterday, Madam Chair. As for when it was seen, I'm not for certain, but
So-
it was late morning, I believe.
So, and here's what I'm saying. So, Mr. Manager, even if you're finding that the items relative to stormwater drainage and the City of Riviera Beach proposal concerning Peanut Island is relative to the interlocal agreement, I would not have known that. Like, how would we have known that is what my question is.
In the original conversation that I had with the board, when I asked the board if they had any question or any comments to the items that the port had proffered and then any other items they wanted to discuss, they've been separated consistently in 3 different areas of focus. 1, the interlocal agreement, 2, the drainage issue, and 3, the proposal on Peanut Island. if it is the board's pleasure, realistically, the presentation on those items should take no more than 5 minutes unless the board wants to get into more specificities, because in my conversation with the executive director and staff at the port, I can explain what their intention is about the meeting, and that would probably provide a little bit more clarity that they're not looking for us to come up with a public policy solution at the meeting on the 30th, just to talk about the issues.
Madam Chair, I could amend my motion such that we revise the agenda to put the Housing Authority issue first, if that pleases my colleague.
Who's the second from?
Second.
All right. Vote for the adoption of the agenda.
In the revised order? of
Yes,
agenda?
with Housing Authority being number one.
Well, and I certainly appreciate that, but I do appreciate that, but that's not the point that I was suggesting. Like, we only get this, excuse me, we only get this the night before, right? And my understanding was there was the 2 items, and then I seen 2 additional items, and you're saying we got a memo today. So don't expect that I should have already known. And then ironically, right, moments before the meeting, we get a binder that says stormwater drainage in Peanut Island. So it's a problem about communicating, and I don't ever want to go into a meeting not understanding what I'm going to be, like almost at the closed session today. There was reference to articles for an agreement that we have never even seen. So please, in the spirit of communicating, let's try to do a better job and not send out things the day before or a memo on the day of and expect that this is something that I'm supposed to, just turn around and say, okay, let's discuss and deliberate on it, because it's not fair to me.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
can we call the question, please?
Madam Clerk.
Councilperson Lawson?
Yes.
Councilperson Lanier?
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy?
Yes.
Pro Tem Botel?
Yes.
Chair Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
I didn't do the disclosures by council. Are there any disclosures from council?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I have had conversations with members of the Housing Authority regarding their interest in the property on 19th and E.
Anyone else?
Same, Madam Chair.
All right, anyone else? I believe I had a conversation, it's been a couple months back, though. Anyone else? All right. Any person who would like to speak on an agenda item, please fill out a public comment card located on the desk directly outside of the council chambers and give it to the staff prior to the item being presented to City Council for discussion. Members of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak on each regular agenda item. In no event will anyone be allowed to submit a comment card and speak on an agenda item after the resolution is read or item considered. Item number 1, which we've renamed to
Item number 4, which has been renumbered to number 1.
Yes, read the name of it.
Housing Authority request for city-owned surplus property. Madam Chair, we do have public comment cards on this item. The acceptance of public comment cards on this item is now closed.
All right, Mr. Manager?
Madam Chair, if I can have the representatives from the Housing Authority, they do have a presentation that they would like to share with the City Council. At the conclusion of their presentation, staff will provide some additional comments.
All right. Who's coming up?
Good evening,
Good evening.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of council, Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager. Thank you for the opportunity to come this evening. The Riviera Beach Housing Authority would like to request that this board give consideration for the revision of to the policy and procedure for resolution number 77-12, the procedure for the sale, exchange, or donation of city-owned real property to allow the city to donate properties in addition to the CRA to the Riviera Beach Housing Authority. I'm John Hurt. I'm the Executive Director of the Riviera Beach Housing Authority. We have our chairman, Mr. Delvin Thomas. We have our vice chair, Mr. Jeffrey Jackson. We have Commissioner Spiritus, Glenn Spiritus, and also we have our affordable housing consultant, Mr. Ron Davis. We're here this evening to have the opportunity for you to give great consideration this evening to passing a motion for our request. First of all, we'd like to bring you good news about success. Right now, as you can see that picture, I hope it's visual for you, that's the Heron Estates Senior Building located at the old Ivy Green Senior and Family Project. That's 101 units of senior facility that has a swimming pool as well as a hot tub. And the good part is that the seniors are moving in as we speak this week. So this is a first opportunity for the Housing Authority to bring to this community an opportunity for affordable living for our seniors. So that's just wanted to begin with our success story. We have completed the development of 101 units of affordable housing for seniors at Heron Estates, and we will be developing another 79 units of affordable family units at Heron Estates in the coming year. The redevelopment of that former Ivy Green site it was approximately $40 million of redevelopment effort. So that's where I'd like to begin this evening. Our goals of the Board of the Riviera Beach Housing Authority is to develop 200 or more units of affordable and workforce housing and 50 or more affordable home ownership units throughout the city of Riviera Beach over the next 2 years. We currently have developed a relationship with equity partners who are willing to work with us over the next 3 to 5 years to build affordable and workforce housing in the city of Riviera Beach. They're not just interested in working with us with one project, but they're interested in working with us with multiple projects. In order for us to continue and meet our goals to build more affordable housing, which is our mission.
Could I,
the
sorry,
need for
interrupt
sites-
for 1 second? Is this PowerPoint supposed to be matching this here?
No, ma'am.
Oh.
That's another PowerPoint. That's
Oh.
a presentation.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
okay,
We don't have the handout for this.
okay,
Okay? We'll gladly answer any of your questions as we go along.
all right.
Okay? So the need for sites and site control is critical for us to be able to continue to develop affordable housing in the city. So donated sites would only be used by the Housing Authority for the development of affordable and workforce rental and homeownership housing and mixed-use developments in the city of Riviera Beach. We feel that if you agree with this, we're not interested in warehousing sites, so any sites that we are unable to develop for any reason would, on an agreed upon time frame, revert back to the city. So our request this evening is that we're requesting that you revise the current policy and procedure number RES number 77-12, the procedure for the sale, exchange, or donation of city-owned real property to allow the city to donate properties to the Riviera Beach Housing Authority. One of the handouts I gave you is a suggested revision, just a short revision to that policy as it stands now. I highlighted it on the policy, and it should be on the second page of the policy. We feel we must work closely with the city and have their cooperation to improve the affordable housing situation in the city of Riviera Beach for our residents. It's our primary mission at the Housing Authority to develop housing for not only low-income families, but moderate-income families as well. We currently have a cooperation agreement with the CRA as well as the CDC, and we're working with them as well. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you on behalf of the staff and the board for your consideration. We are prepared to move forward immediately to develop parcels in the city, a parcel in particular. And I'd like to have that opportunity to make that presentation to you.
If it is the pleasure of the board, we can go on to the next presentation, and then staff can provide some insight.
Walter? Oh, you got it?
Okay, figured it out. Okay. Good evening once again. One of the projects that we have been looking at over the past 6 months, 8 months, is the Avenue E corridor and properties along that corridor, as well as other parts of the city. We primarily had walked the E Street corridor with potential equity investors who are very interested in working with us, as I said. We certainly identified one property in particular. We have been developing a proposed development that
You're going to have to pull it down. It's not a PowerPoint.
right here. There you go. Okay, this is not the PowerPoint.
No.
Now I'm worried. Too much. We have looked at the 19th Street as a potential workforce housing project consisting of anywhere from 74 to 90 units, possibly be able to go to 100 units. The building would be a courtyard-style building, would also house management staff, would have a fitness center, community rooms with games, a lounge, a playground, and additional storage facilities, a laundry room, and a variety of other amenities. The proposed project is designed for a parcel that is currently owned by the city of Riviera Beach. It's designed for workforce-age adults and families with children. As I indicated, the number of units would be anywhere from 74 up to 100 walk-up type units, 3-story building. The current mix at 74, which would change depending upon the total number of units, would be 10 2-bedroom, 2-bath townhouses, 12 2-bedroom, 2-bath flats, and 52 1-bedroom, 1-bed flats. This project is pre-developed in the sense that we've looked at it architecturally. We have some preliminary design and renderings. We've done a market study along Avenue E, and our market study has indicated that it would be a viable project for workforce housing. We are prepared with the information and the development that we have at this point to submit a sale application that's coming up in mid-November. It's a sale application for the financing of affordable multifamily housing development to be used in conjunction with tax-exempt bonds and non-competitive housing credits. We have had discussions with the Palm Beach County Housing Finance Agency to do a bond issuance for this project, and we're prepared to continue to move forward and make an application to the Florida Housing Finance Corporation for sale. November is a very short timeline for us to gain site control, which would be critical, and begin to develop a viable application. This is the site in question. It's currently owned by the city. It's 1.2453 acres. Giving that and giving the zoning in the downtown corridor gives us a lot of flexibility in the number of units that we can put on that particular site. The great part is that it's vacant, so there's no demolition, no extensive demolition or relocation involved. We have some preliminary designs. We've looked at this, and these are just a couple of concepts. The downtown corridor requires the frontage on E Street to be a townhouse-type facade, if it's not a mixed-use development. We planned a three-story project, walk-up, not to get into the expense of elevators initially, was our initial thought. As we increase the number of units, I'm sure we can look to see if that could be an option in the final development of the property. This gives you an idea of some of the concepts that we were looking at. It's a courtyard type concept. It'll be interior parking to meet the parking requirements, and there'll also be some street parking to maintain a unit to parking ratio. As you can see, this rendering shows townhouses fronting the Avenue E along this corridor here. It's not a very big marker. And then the courtyard would include playgrounds and other amenities. I'm sure, hopefully on yours, you can see a little better the layout of the site.
No,
No.
Not really, okay.
not at all.
I'm sorry.
On the inner part of
Oh,
where the
right. I'm sorry.
playground is that the back door of those apartments, or are there apartments on the back side?
The apartments will,
All face, I mean, they'll all face outwards?
yeah, they will all face outward.
Okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
their back door would be open up to the playground area?
Yeah, the townhouses would, some of the bedrooms in this particular design, many of the one bedrooms are on the third floor, because we didn't want children running from the third floor down to the first floor. So a lot of the two bedrooms, a lot of the two bedrooms are in the middle floors. One of the things we wanted to point out is our discussion of the roofing system here. You want to speak to that?
Members of the council, let me just share with you. I'm Ron Davis, the Affordable Housing Consultant to the Housing Authority. The intent here is to give the council the real sense that the Housing Authority has a preliminary site plan developed that will have to be reviewed by city staff and fine-tuned and finally approved by you. So a lot of this is just a conceptual model, so many things will change. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions going downstream, but we only required to have a conceptual rendering in an application to Florida Housing. The most important thing that we'll need to have is to have a site to put this on. Without a site, we can't even start an application because the site requires so many other measures that we have to do and complete. But we want to give you the sense that we have a preliminary site plan, we have an architect working on it, we'll be working with the city staff with a formal site plan application, we'll be making adjustments to that site plan per staff's suggestions, and then coming to planning and zoning as well as to you. But all of that does not have to take place before the application that has to be into Florida Housing by mid-November.
Did you want to speak to the proof?
Good evening, council. The roof design, we was looking for a new concept moving forward. As we know, everybody's going to the whole green. So when we're speaking with the architect, I advised him, hey, let's try to see if we could do a green roof. At first, everybody looked around, was like, I don't know. But I think the green roof is the concept that we need to go to. I think the change that we're trying to bring to the E Avenue corridor is a downtown walkable living space to provide safe and affordable workforce housing for working people, and they deserve something beautiful. Obviously, you see we work hard to what we've brought you on Congress Avenue for the seniors, which myself, I would want to live in there if I could. Dr. Motel, I'm sure you've been by and saw the building. It's rather beautiful. So ride by there tonight when you leave here and watch the lights and watch how that place just lights up and excites you. So we want to bring excitement to the E Avenue corridor, and we definitely need your help doing that.
Thank you, Chair.
I had a question about the parking. So there are 74 units and only 88 parking spots. Is that thinking there will be only one car per house?
If I remember correctly, this board passed a resolution indicating for affordable housing, the parking ratio was 1-to-1. Am I correct?
I couldn't tell you, unfortunately. I haven't looked that up.
I think this board did. I'm sure the city manager will correct me if I'm wrong.
Mr. McCoy, are you familiar?
Yeah, I think we did that for the Stony Brook.
We did it for, I was just going to say, we did it for Stony
okay.
Brook.
Yeah.
We did. We did, yeah.
That was for the Stony Brook.
Okay, thank you. We already had some preliminary plans as far as unit design and layout. And once again, as Mr. Davis indicated, that these were preliminary plans that we were waiting to get an opportunity to get site control so that we can finish and be more specific in our designs for our application for funding. So with that being said, we will gladly try and answer any questions that you may have now. We are at this time asking for your consideration and motion to approve this change to your policy and procedure. It is our primary mission as a housing authority by state statute to develop and manage affordable housing for not only low-income families, but low and moderate income families as well. So in our goals for the housing authority, not only is this the first one, but we're looking to do development of scattered site housing, single families throughout the city. The housing authority's jurisdiction is the city of Riviera Beach. So the board is not only looking at this project, but they're looking for future projects, particularly on the west side and in other parts of our city. So if you have any questions, we'll gladly try to address them this evening.
Do we have public comment cards?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll go to public comment cards, and then we'll come back.
Drs. Glenn Spiritus, Jeffrey Jackson. Madam Chair, our connection to show the time up on the screen is not working, but time is being taken.
It always do.
Members of the City Council, Mayor, City Manager, good evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to thank you for taking the time tonight and especially putting us on as number one on your agenda. That was very, Very nice of you to do that. I'm here to speak as a member of the Housing Authority and as a resident. I have worked with many housing authorities over the years in developing affordable housing. You know, here in City of Riviera Beach, you have a need for thousands of affordable housing units, workforce housing. We don't have to do another study to verify that. We can see it. We know it's there. We have the ability, I heard you speak tonight about Treasure Coast coming in to do their study of Broadway and the surrounding area, but it could take 2 to 3 years to bring a project out of ground into fruition, and I don't think we really have the time. We're in a critical situation right now in the city of Riviera Beach. We have the ability to jumpstart, affordable housing, workforce housing, and affordable housing, and this is an opportunity that doesn't come by that often. We have the ability, we have a short period right now in order to submit the applications necessary to make this project happen. So I would ask you to please support this project. It's important to a lot of people that live here in the city, and I think it'd be a great thing for the future for the city. So please, thank you for your consideration and giving us the time tonight.
Thank you.
Jeffrey Jackson.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Jeffrey Jackson, and I just want to say, a year ago, we watched $6 billion at the national level be removed from public housing, and cities and housing authorities are left to go the way on their own. I believe that if we partner and we realize your vision alongside our own, we can accomplish anything. I'll ask your support and allowing us to move forward with this development, and I am very confident with this team we can do some wonderful things for the city, and we're committed to it. We get along great, and I think we will realize all of our goals and objectives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, that completes public comments.
All right. Mr. Evans, were you wanting to add
Yes.
something?
Madam Chair and members of the board, I had an opportunity to meet with representatives from the Housing Authority looking at the policy modification that they are asking for, and I think you have to take them in two separate issues. One, does the board desire to make the policy modification that you can surplus property to the Housing Authority, and that's something that seemingly is a very easy fix. The other side of it is looking at, in the event that the city was to surplus parcels, there's some things to consider as a part of that. One, we want to create a situation, if the board chooses to move in that direction, that you do not have a situation where property is land banked, where property is held in any entity for a number of years. You definitely want to see projects that are effectively shovel-ready and that you can see projects come out of the ground. The other side of it is the city going to contribute any taxable dollars or any general revenue to help support some of those projects, and I would say that you have to consider that if you are bringing the property to the table. Then another situation where you may not want to, or you may want to put some prohibitions that do not allow for additional taxpayer dollars to be contributed to the construction of any particular facility if you are bringing the property to the table. The other thing is that you probably want to put in some deed restrictions or some stipulations that in the event that progress is not made in a certain amount of period, or certain period of time, that the property reverts back to the municipality for the purposes of utilizing it for economic development. One of the things that is important is, as we move forward as a city, if we want to see the Broadway corridor transform, you're going to need an opportunity to have people live and reside in there. So densities, intensities, to create that focal point and having people live in there is ultimately living in the Broadway corridor is what's going to allow for economic growth and development to occur. There are some other parcels that the city and the CRA should be interested in to look to really assemble some parcels for the purposes of looking at some mixed-use development, looking at moderate to low-income housing as well as market rate housing. And I had a very productive conversation with the Housing Authority about moving in such a direction. Some other government entities talk about that if the property is owned and occupied and controlled by the housing authority is an exempt, that asset is now exempt off the tax roll. But there's other entities that have worked out with housing authorities a pilot program, so which is payment in lieu of taxes. And so there's other mechanisms that that can be considered. But all in all, staff believes that you should have some flexibility from a public policy standpoint to make a contribution of property to the housing authority and to other entities that coincide with your collective vision as an organization. And if the board wants to modify the policy, the staff can bring forward something that makes this recommended change. As it relates to this particular parcel, that is a policy decision that you all will have to direct staff as how you wish to proceed. But I wanted to throw out all different elements in there so you can make a informed public policy decision and know what's available to you. If it is the pleasure of the board, staff will move in whatever direction. We know that time is of the essence, so conceivably we can bring something back that accomplishes what the board's direction would be at your second meeting in October, which is October 16th. So staff is here to provide any additional comments or perspectives to the matter.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
just a few quick questions. Just for clarity, I guess either Mr. Hertz or someone from housing, these are all going to be rentals for the community, correct? This project? Rental units?
Yes, these are rental units.
Is there a reason when we did the market study that 75% of the project was going to be listed as one-bedroom rentals at 450 square feet?
The market study did favor one-bedrooms for the walkable work area that we're talking about in workforce housing. They felt that it should be a smaller unit heavy in that particular corridor at this time. We've looked up and down the corridor, and certainly there'll be a mix of properties developed up and down the corridor. But this first in sort of project, the market study did recommend you have more one-bedrooms than the larger bedrooms.
Okay, and then second question, the rental units, the complex, if it's actually transferred over to Housing Authority, who handles the property management of this complex?
And this particular project is depending upon our final developer partner, oftentimes, and it depends upon the final funding stack. If we get sale funds from Florida Housing Finance Corporation, they always want you to use one of their quote-unquote qualified property management, professional property management companies. So oftentimes developers do have Florida Housing Finance qualified property management firms on their team, oftentimes an extension of their development company, such as the case at Heron Estates. So it would either be that, but we would have to have a professional property management company that would be acceptable by the Florida Housing Finance Corporation.
And that was the same process that was taken for Heron Estates. The property management was selected by the self-funding organization?
The property manager at Heron Estates is a part of the Housing Trust Group, which is our co-developer.
Okay. And last question, Madam Chair, Mr. Evans, you said that the property would come off of the tax roll if given to this entity, but there'd be other options for funding. If you could just go into a little bit of detail for what the city would actually be able to receive in regards to actually some type of benefit.
Right. You can set up through an arrangement, a pilot program, which is payment in lieu of taxes. And so some other entities, government entities, have entered into arrangements to allow for that. Not something, because when you do take an asset off the tax roll that is in your main corridor, a lot of entities say, well, what's the benefit associated with it? But the other side of it is we need the individuals residing within that core to see the economic development that we would like to see occur. The other side of it is we even discussed about the possibility of incorporating some mixed use where you have some storefronts that may be on the bottom floor with residential on top, and that is something that the Housing Authority was not opposed to, and something that I think that as we go through the multiple iterations and go through the process of getting us from point A to point B, that can be incorporated as you, the policymakers that are bringing that asset to the table, can stipulate that you want to see a concerted effort to look to stack the commercial operations and then go residential. Because if I'm not mistaken, the Housing Authority said the property does allow for, the existing design allows for more units. If you want to speak to that.
And Madam Chair, if I also may comment, the property is not currently on the tax roll. If it's conveyed to the Housing Authority, the land may have some exemption or pilot, but the improvement would be done by a private entity, and it would be taxable. So the improvements would be taxable. Any tax favor would just be with the land.
And I'm going to come back to that question with the improvement being taxable, but the question with the market rents. This is affordable housing for these rental units. What rental prices have we looked at in regards to the market currently? I know that within a year it could possibly change, but what is the rental rate for those units based on the 1 and 2 bedrooms?
Our market study, and I don't have that, the market study indicate, I think the rents were from 4 low end to about 700 to make it affordable, as I remember. That market study was completed just shy of a year ago, and I apologize, I don't have that information in front of me, so I'll gladly provide it. As we develop this, there are a lot of things. One of the things that the Florida Housing Finance Corporation allows now is called income averaging, and that allows you to have more higher end rents mixed in with your affordable rents, so you can get a larger mix. If you put more higher end rents into the property, you just have to put more lower rents in to balance it. That's all.
And do we have an estimated cost on what this project is going to cost to build?
Well, when we were at 74, I think we were somewhere around 12 for construction. And
the preliminary site plan that calls for 74 units will have an estimated construction cost of approximately $12+ million. That does not include soft and hard soft costs as well. You know, the various documents have to be provided. You know, and the cost of financing. So we're looking at a total project cost of about $20 million. To be very similar to what we're doing at Heron Estates. Phase 2.
Okay.
Yes.
So the reason I'm asking colleagues is just looking at this with this coming off of our tax roll, I definitely want us to take a look at some type of payments in lieu of taxes, something that could actually be beneficial for the city, because it's definitely nothing on the tax roll now, but if it's developed moving forward, it will add to the tax roll. Revenues on this property is going to be close to $500,000 in regards to affordable rent for this property on an annual basis. After property management expenses and operating costs, that's going to generate around $350,000 to $400,000 in revenue for rental at this property. So we're taking all of this off the property, and it's going to be generating and possibly break even and pay off this build cost of $12 million within a certain time frame. So I want us to make sure we take that into consideration, where if we take it off the tax roll, we need to look at possibly implementing a P3 project. We need to implement some type of revenue for the city and not just completely eliminate it. But I'm definitely all for development, because right now it's been sitting there vacant. So I definitely want the Housing Authority looking at this beautiful project that they did on Heron Estates on Congress. I want us to move forward with it as quickly as possible, but taking into factor that we're not going to discredit just giving the land away.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I have a question about the current zoning. What kind of density does it currently allow for? And is it zone mixed use? Because I really believe that we need to have it be a mixed use project with some kind of retail on the bottom if we move forward. And I also agree with wanting to do some kind of a payment in lieu of taxes so that we're not just giving the property over without that consideration.
Right now, Avenue E is zoned the downtown corridor, and there are no real restrictions to density. As it stands now, I don't know, I thought I heard some conversation among you that might be looked at again, but as it stands now, it's zoned downtown corridor, and it allows maximum number of units that you can put on it per acre, depending upon the construction and design.
So this plan maximizes that?
Pardon me?
This plan accounts for the maximum number of units that you can have on that property?
Well, as we look at this property, depends upon the feasibility, economic feasibility of it. As it says, as it looks now, we could look at a design that's with our current design up to 90 units, okay? But that could possibly go back and look at it. When we first did this design, we didn't look at this site exactly. We were looking at other opportunities, but we wanted to have a plan that we were ready to go with and have the flexibility. Once we get to go ahead, we can give you more particulars on that.
Okay, because I imagine if you've got, I thought it was up there still, if you've got retail on the bottom floor, you would reduce the number of units, but if you have a little bit more height or a little bit more density, you can increase that number of units back again, yeah?
Yes, that's correct. And we originally looked at a mixed use along that corridor. In talking with our potential equity partners and developers, we wanted to maximize the number of residential units, so we sort of redesigned for all residential for this point. But as I shared with the city manager, we've looked at mixed-use concepts with commercial on the first floor. We'd have to step back and see if that's the ideal one for this particular site. I think, and I don't know if the city manager would want to talk about it, in our conversation, there's a partial that fronts Broadway, the Miami sub-site, that's for sale, that could possibly be done in conjunction with this project. That would give us the type of commercial you'd like to see along that corridor. And as I told the city manager, I'm willing to work with the city so that we can do something cooperatively in that. And I think that can become a phase 2 of this project. We're trying to move ahead as fast as we can to get some units built, okay? And this is, the opportunity is, for us, is ripe now because we have one interested equity partners with money who have been working with us for the past 6 months and want to do something, and that opportunity doesn't come around all of the time.
Is this property in the Opportunity Zone?
Pardon me?
Is this property in the Opportunity Zone?
No. The Opportunity Zone in Riviera Beach
West.
stops at President Barack Obama Boulevard, unfortunately. But we've had that discussion with our equity partners, and we're looking for those opportunities in the empowerment zone as well,
Okay.
an opportunity zone as well.
My last question, does the city manager have a recommendation for the board?
I have I'll speak on the property that we talked about in our conversations with the Housing Authority. I think to make the mixed-use development a successful concept, the frontage on Broadway is critical, because any commercial or retail outfit is going to want to have the visibility from the roadway. And so being that parcel is available, I think if the city was to look to acquire it, now you're looking at, you're going to add the residential component with the retail component, and you can see that being the linchpin for economic development in the Broadway corridor. So I think it's something that we should seriously consider. It is within the CRA district, so I was going to have, I like the properties, but I want Scott to pay for it.
Yep.
But, you know, there's certain things that I think we certainly need to look if we're going to enter into this arrangement, that particular parcel really can speak to what Councilman Lawson communicated, and you, Dr. Botel, about the payment in lieu of taxes. That can be the mechanism to effectively assist in funding the development to create the synergy that we're looking for. Plus, the other side of is if you have people that are in that downtown core, chances are they're going to go to the restaurants, and there's going to be the density there is going to help move some things forward. As it relates to the public policy, that items before you as it relates to a recommendation, my recommendation is you should certainly modify the policy to give you the flexibility to consider proposals like this. And we've had a long-standing relationship with the Housing Authority, and this is something that they've got private sector dollars that are readily available to assist in moving this project forward. As far as if the board wants to move forward on the surplus, that's a public policy decision from the board as to where you want to go. But I think that one parcel, that the frontage on Broadway, is something that I think assist in changing the entire dynamics of this particular project. So I think they can both work in tandem, but it depends on the direction that the board wants to go on this particular item.
Question.
Go ahead.
So if I understand correctly, if we do mixed use along, I guess, this project that you're suggesting, retail or commercial downstairs along with residential units, isn't there a pro rata portion of that that's designated for ad valorem taxes that is derived from ad valorem taxes when you have private industry?
Yes, that's correct.
So, but I guess right now, having this conversation, it's hard to say what that percentage is. And I certainly agree with the payment in lieu of taxes, but if it's going to be on the tax roll to some degree, which we don't know yet, I think payment in lieu of taxes is probably the best thing. But my only suggestion is, obviously, I would definitely support a deed restriction, because I know what we did for Stony Brooks in order to allow them to do the one parking space per unit, that they had to maintain affordable housing for, I believe it was 25 years. Now, that creates a little bit of confusion because we don't really know how many units that we're going to end up with if you decide to go and do mixed use down below. Then, also, the other portion is, I would think in most projects of this size, 5 years is probably ample enough time for you guys to go and get planning, financing, and get something out of the ground. And my position is, if it doesn't happen in that time, then it will revert back to the city, or it would come back to the city, right? And then we would then assess, you know, if there is some mitigating reasons or we're almost there. I wouldn't want it to be automatic, but I would want it to come back to us so we can review this. Now, we're in 2024, as to if you guys haven't already got CO, what's going on, or if even in the interim, if 3 years down the line something comes up, but no more than 5 years, what I would think that it would take to get this project CO. That's financing and all of those things included. But there has to be a conversation about the deed restrictions, because if you want the affordable housing component and have the one parking space per unit, then that really has to be a part of the conversation. So that's what I would.
Yes, Councilman, there's no problem with that in our conversations. You know, we're here to build affordable and workforce housing, so that's not an issue with us, and in our conversations with our partners, that is not an issue. I do want to make it clear, though, we do understand the improvements that are built on the partial would be taxable because it will be a private entity that's building that. The only tax exemption, if any, will be on the land itself because it's owned by the housing authority. And because the housing authority will be doing a long-term lease with the entity that's doing the improvements. Okay, we provide a ground lease to them. Mr. Davis.
If I may, thank you, John. Councilman, I think that the matter mentioned by the city manager, Councilman Lawson, and you, payment in lieu of taxes by Dr. Botel, is a very reasonable approach. It's been done in a lot of entities around the country where the government is trying not to lose money on this property. Secondly, actually, the zoning itself, the preliminary site plan is proposed per zoning, current zoning, except the first floor of your current zoning does, in fact, suggest retail, commercial on the first floor. So even if we were to come, as we go through a review process with your planning staff and zoning board and coming back to you, that would be something, the only way that we would not include the retail or commercial is that you grant us an exemption so that we could just do all housing. But the current zoning, as present in your current code, does require retail commercial on the first floor. The only concern we had in discussing, because we know this will have a lot of discussion going forward through your staff as well as you, is whether or not, the 19th Street side of this property is almost like a large alleyway. We're not certain as to how commercially viable that side of the property is, but certainly 20th Street and Avenue E would be a viable zoning consideration.
Madam Chair?
And if I may add before we go, one of the considerations is funding sources. The type of funding sources that SEL provides and the tax bond provides aren't always conducive to doing the commercial part. So in those discussions, we may have to look for alternate funding sources for the commercial part vis-a-vis the affordable housing part. So that was one of the real reasons that in developing this project, we decided for this particular site to go all residential. But I'm with the city manager. If that's a phase 2 initiative that we can join with, then we can satisfy that commercial on the Broadway side in the phase 2.
I think Mr. Lawson had something to add.
Madam Chair.
Or she cutting you off? Go, Mr. Evans. Can't talk.
And Madam Chair, the Housing Authority was very amenable to a concept that incorporated the mixed-use element. And one of the things that we did talk about is that the real advantage is that Broadway frontage. And if that piece was added to the proverbial puzzle, that they can be able to accommodate what we're looking for as far as mixed use and things like that. But again, based on where the property sits now and how it stands today, it provides some challenge for viable mixed use. And so, and the other side of it is how this Housing Authority has communicated that there would be a mechanism that would need to assist in seeing that mixed use come to fruition. Some other municipalities have said also, in the event that they have surplus that property, that is effectively the contribution that the organization is making to say, instead of a payment in lieu of taxes, and we know that we'll receive tax revenue on the improvements, that's the contribution that the agency is bringing to the table, and not levying the payment in lieu of taxes, but you have to put retail on the bottom floor for the purposes of creating additional retail opportunities for the community. So there's a litany of different things that you all can consider. Obviously, I think that one parcel that fronts Broadway is a very valuable asset that we should really consider as a city. But then this project in its entirety, and the only way that you're going to see economic redevelopment occur in your downtown corridor, you have to have people living there to create the necessity for somebody to open up a coffee shop or a bagel shop or those types of things. So, that's what I think some of the other projects that we're looking to put in that area to do is to bring more people to live in that particular area of our community.
Madam Chair? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted to, first of all, the schematic drawings, I'm just gonna be honest, no disrespect, gentlemen, but it looks like a prison yard and a prison complex, the way this is designed. So I'm hoping that, you know, we do move forward with this, that you can come back with some other type of design other than this prison yard looking design that I'm looking at here. Second of all, when we had some conversations, I had conversations with you guys before, and I don't think that I ever heard that we would give anything away. I have a little problem with giving anything from the city away, especially something as valuable as property, and something especially as valuable as the property where it is. Now, the policy that you're asking us to change, I have a problem with that as well, because I don't think that the city should be giving away property just because of the entity that it is. And I also think that, from my understanding, what's to say that the city can't develop its own property? I don't know why we have to go out and get somebody else to do it when we could easily do it ourselves, but I understand your position. I just think that there's a lot of things to be worked out here. I'm not prepared tonight to vote on anything in terms of moving forward with this, because I still have a lot of questions, and I still want to know a lot of the issues in terms of the property, how much it's worth, what we're giving away, what we're getting back in return for it. Is it going to be a single use, mixed use? There's just too many questions that I have about this to even make a decision tonight about it. But I appreciate you gentlemen coming forward with the idea.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
What would be our next steps if we wanted to instruct Mr. Scott Evans in regards to beginning negotiations? Being that we just found out we have some money sitting in a CDE account to begin negotiations on that Miami Subs location, because if that could work in conjunction with this project, I think we need to immediately try to obtain that property and move forward with that.
If it is just a consensus from the board for the city manager and the CRA director to actively pursue this property, we will commence doing so immediately.
As part of, and also to address Commissioner, Councilwoman Lanier's concerns with giving the property away, I definitely understand that we want to take a look at values. We want to understand what we're actually giving away, but we have to be aggressive on developing, like right now. So if we can instruct Mr. Evans to begin negotiations with Mr. Scott Evans to possibly purchase that Miami Subs location, and then work in conjunction with the Housing Authority, I think that's definitely an approach we should take.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
I don't have any problem with the next step being that the city acquires property. I have no problem with that. I do have a problem with how this whole thing is going to play out, and tonight is not I don't have enough information to even make a decision about how this is going to play out. But if the city's going to acquire property, I'm fine with moving forward with that part of it.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So,
Madam Chair?
Hold on 1 minute.
So, I don't have a problem with what's being asked, simply because, believe it or not, we give away property all the time. And I just, to that point, when I was reviewing this in preparation, I know we just gave the Alphas the maritime property for 5 years, and I know, and I sent this to the attorney, that there was a number of provisions that, and I know that you two voted against it, but there was a number of provisions in that agreement which I didn't think was good for the city, that they should be, at least the tenant should be screened through us, but they have the property for 5 years. They don't pay us, nothing. It's a nominal amount, I believe. But the reason why I thought this was important, but believe it or not, the Housing Authority is a dependent district that was created by the city of Riviera Beach. So it's not as if they're some completely separate organization, but they were in fact created by us. And in light that we don't have a community development program, that we're out actually doing the development, it seems like if this is something that we're not going to do, there's not a plan that I've seen in our current budget or even in the 2030 workshop vision plan, that we even have the capacity to even take on, doing this kind of development. So I think for me, the overall idea was to spur and start development. I mean, that's why I thought it was a great idea, and, I've asked a couple times that we at least have this discussion, but, it is a dependent district on the city, and that's why I don't have a problem with where it is now.
Madam Chair?
Well, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I understand that the Housing Authority was created by the city of Riviera Beach, but they also were shut down by HUD in 2004. So we have to be careful about what we give away. This board has never given away anything. This sitting board here, there may be something that happened in the past, but what we need to do, this city is vulnerable right now. We are coming together as a new board. We are trying to figure out how to move this city forward, and I know that we want to have development, we really do. But we have to be careful about what we give away and what we have in terms of our land. It is not something to easily give away. So if we're going to move forward, I want to have all the information to do just that.
Madam Chair?
I had a question. For the development on Congress, I know majority of I know those were vouchers, I understand that, but there were several organizations a part of that development. Would it just be the Housing Authority handling this, or there would be other organizations who would ultimately have more of a percentage right?
We will have development partners and equity partners in order to do this type of development. It will not be singularly the Housing Authority. We will probably be the majority equity owner, most likely. But
What would change, what would make it different?
The equity partner and our development partners. All of this is an agreement, depending upon who's bringing what to the development, and what equity position you might have as a result of those negotiations. Okay.
So for the development on Congress, what was the percentage?
Well, the development on Congress was a typical tax credit development where our co-developer brought all the equity, paid for the majority of the pre-development costs, which gets into the $500,000 to make application and to put up bonds. But more than that, for the bonds and the tax credits, they provide all of the guarantees. They guarantee the construction, they guarantee the management compliance, okay, for the life of the tax credit. So for 15 years, they are on the line to provide any guarantees, because tax credit is an IRS function, okay? And if they default in any of those areas, they are the person to provide the guarantees.
So if you had to break it down in percentage as to who owns what, for lack of
From
a
an
better
equity
word.
position, the people who provided the money for the syndication, they own 99%.
Okay,
Our co-development partner owns 0.9%, and we own 0.1%.
okay, so
And-
with this particular project here that we're talking about, would we essentially be giving the land to the Housing Authority, or it would be to that majority owner group, equity group?
We still own that land on Congress. We still own.
You own the land, right?
We own the land,
Mhm.
and we provided a ground lease to the entity that did the improvements.
Okay.
This would be the same
The
scenario.
same thing.
The Housing Authority will continue to own the land as a tax-exempt organization,
Mhm.
okay? The City of Riviera Beach Housing Authority.
Mhm.
And then the final entity would own the improvements. And the distribution of that ownership is this a negotiated function.
Do you see the Housing Authority having a percentage in that?
Oh, absolutely. We
More
share-
than what you have on Congress? or-
Absolutely.
Roughly
At this
what?
point in our preliminary discussions, we're going to own probably 51 to 60% at this point in time.
50 to 60?
Yes, 51 to 60.
51
We
to
plan to be
the majority?
equity owner.
Okay. Ms. Lanier, was that you?
Oh, yeah, one final, thank you, Vice Chair. I wanted to make the comment, we have a rescission clause in Hampton Estates. After the tax credits burn off, after 15 years, that whole site comes back to us.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And it will probably be the same thing with this development. Some equity people are in for the life, but most of them are in for
Certain period of time.
short term.
All right, Ms.
Madam
Lanier? Oh, who, was it Lawson or Lanier? Is she going to let you talk tonight, Mr.
Go ahead,
Lawson?
Lanier.
I was going to say that also, in terms of the development and asking the CRA about the property in front of it, why we can't get the CRA to do the development. I'm just really having some, in terms of giving, and I say giving in quotes because of the issue of the city's property. As I stated before, the city is in a very vulnerable position. Our assets, our property, our land is our most valuable assets, and I don't want to have conversations or 20-minute, 30-minute conversations and just give away what we own. So, with that being said, gentlemen, I think that we can move forward with this, but we have to have much more information in order to do that.
Madam Chair?
Madam Chair?
I want to make a motion that we proceed with updating Resolution 7712 to reflect the verbiage that we add the Housing Authority of Riviera Beach to and development of workforce and affordable housing to allow for them to be receiving of donations, purchased, and sale of all property, and add that to the resolution.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Councilperson Lawson,
Yes.
Councilperson Lanier,
No.
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Pro Tem Botel,
Yes.
Chairperson Miller Anderson is out. That motion is approved with Councilperson Lanier dissenting.
Thank you, members.
Madam Chair, so that only, Ms. Evans, did you have something?
You're going to say it. Go ahead.
So that only resolved the policy issue?
Right.
Correct.
Easy
Right.
part.
So, yeah, this is the toughest part because while it's now ripe to consider donating them the property, I'm just curious as to how do we capture in the reverter clause and the deed restrictions, because believe it or not, and this is what I shared with our attorney, just reviewing what we seen at the Maritime Academy, that property came from Palm Beach County School District with deed restrictions. And then when I looked at the agreement that we've now allowed the Alpha Foundation to do, I didn't think, in my opinion, that what I've seen in that lease agreement was consistent. And then, I had one of the tenants come and meet with me about community benefits, was consistent with what the deed restrictions were from the county. So I want to know, how do we get to the point of now formulating a plan to convey this land with some protections for the city, including payment in lieu?
What I would recommend to the board is that if that is the board's pleasure, is that you direct the city attorney and the city manager to draft a contract that the board can consider and stipulate some of the things that you have communicated as areas of concern or areas of focus as part of the agreement, and then that would come back to approve the agreement as well as effectively surplus the property if that direction is the direction the board wants to go. So it would have to be something that legal would have to work to draft to ensure that there is those matrix put in place to ensure that the property is not land banked and reverter clause, and that there's some other elements in there. Also, one of the things that I would recommend putting in the contract is expedited permitting. So this process moves quickly because it is so important when you're utilizing all the different stacking of funding that you move quickly on these types of projects. So if it's the board's pleasure, it would just be directing the city manager and city attorney to work with the housing authority to bring forward a contract for consideration that goes forward with what the new policy calls for, and then speaks to some of the items that have been communicated, and then bring that back to consideration for the board at your October 16th meeting.
Madam Chair?
I-
All right.
Go.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make that motion based on what our city manager has just recommended, without having to repeat everything he just said.
I believe we can just give
Did you
the
want to second it?
second
Okay.
discussion.
Comment.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
so moving forward, this is, I guess, what we'd like to do is be able to answer some of the questions that Councilwoman Lanier has. And in this interim now, we can take the time, being that the Housing Authority has the ability to receive the property. Now, we can actually get those answers from our attorney and city manager to give us values, to give us an estimation of what's going on with the property. And we still, as a board, have to determine if we're going to transfer the property anyway. So
Right.
we can still move forward with that.
Right.
Let's just give.
And what I would also encourage is we would get an appraisal on the property, so you know the value of the asset prior to the meeting. So we can assemble all the information, get the market study that was completed, and bring you all the information in a more robust presentation. So if the board chooses to move forward in that direction, you have all the information available, you to make a good public policy decision.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we have two very,
Madam Chair?
we have two very recent appraisals on, at least two very recent appraisals on that property, so.
All right. Yes.
Madam Chair, first of all, thank you, for our passing the first policy. I just want to emphasize that it was our goal and our hope to be able to make application for the sale funds that are going to become available, an application that's going to be due in November. Making these applications is a robust effort as well. And as much time as we may lose going through these processes, we'll take that opportunity away from us being able to get a viable application in November. The thing about these funding sources, they're circular, and that if we miss it in November, we may not get this chance for another year. And that speaks to about land banking and stuff, because when you seek these kinds of funds, if you miss the cycle, then oftentimes you have to wait a year. So I just ask you for your consideration if we can somehow get site control so we can begin the application process. And that could just be probably by option. Yes, if you can just give us that option so we can show that we have site control, then during that period, we will provide the additional information and work out those other issues as we go forward.
So you're saying the October 16th is too late for us to make a decision?
October 16th, in the preparation of our application, may leave us less than 30 days, because applications look like they're going to be due about November 20th.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
They can begin the process of the application without having slight
Right.
control, so that can be prepared in lieu of our discussion.
Right.
So as of our discussion in respect to our colleagues, I would like to get that information that we've requested without giving site control
absolutely.
up on the property.
Right.
But absolutely, by all means, begin that application process with the intention that we pass this resolution to move forward with the Housing Authority.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, so we're good on item number one? We didn't vote yet?
Madam Chair.
Okay.
So my question is, Mr. Hurt, you were going to respond and say something?
Once again, if we make application, we have to have site control. And I'm just hoping that, we can have that documentation. I mean, we in fact have already began a draft of the application, of course, okay? But once to begin to gather all of the documentation and the things needed as it relates to site control, I'm just wondering how that would impact that. Do you ever?
But I thought we just agreed that what we said was fine, so why are we rehashing this?
Yeah, Madam.
You know, I just wanted to make, I don't think he's made it clear to you, what Councilman Lawson suggested is what we will follow through
Right.
and do.
Right.
Because we don't have site control, but this process is working towards site control.
Yeah.
But we know what the potential site is, so we could take all of the necessary measures that's required in the application and apply it to this potential site, so that when this process is completed, we'll kind of come together at the end and have it ready to go.
Okay.
I'm just a little hesitant.
And
I know,
Only
but this is,
because-
we've already made a decision, and so
It's
Thank
it's time to vote
Oh, the
on that
question is-
decision. Was there something else you needed him to say or wanted him to say?
Well,
Because we do have 3 other items, so, I mean, we've already agreed that we're going to move forward with it. I don't think we're changing that.
And Madam Chair, what I can do is as soon as the contract is prepared and everybody's okay with it, we can inform the board accordingly, so the board can make a decision to say, if you wanted to have a special call meeting, you do have the flexibility to do that. So we'll work on as diligently and as quickly on our side, and we'll inform the council when we're to a point where we're ready to bring it forward.
Okay. So if you all want to call a special meeting before the 16th, then we have the option to do so. Okay? All right, Madam Clerk?
Councilperson
Thank you.
Lawson.
Yes.
Councilperson Lanier.
No.
Councilperson McCoy.
yes,
Pro Tem Botel.
Yes.
Chair Miller Anderson.
Yes.
That motion is approved with Councilperson Lanier dissenting.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Council.
Item number
Council,
2.
appreciate all your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Which is now, well,
Yes.
it's the interlocal agreement with the Port of Palm Beach.
Madam Chair, this item that's before you is the 3 items that the Port of Palm Beach would like to discuss with the City of Riviera Beach. The meeting is scheduled for September 30th at 6 p.m. at the Port of Palm Beach. The 3 issues that they would like for the board to discuss is the interlocal agreement, stormwater drainage, and Peanut Island. The intent and the structure of the meeting is going to be a brief introduction into the topic by Port staff, as well as Mr. Gary Hines, Senior Vice President of the Business Development Board of Palm Beach County. What they anticipate is a 10-minute introduction and then 20 minutes for both elected bodies to discuss the issues, and then provide some direction to staff as to how you would like the issues researched, or if we would like to assemble task force or committees to bring back some more substantive recommendations for you all to consider. It's not intended for you all to work through the public policy issue there at the meeting, but merely provide direction to both staffs as to how you would like for us to move forward and the areas you would like to research. Specifically, and I'll briefly talk about the interlocal agreement and then the other items, there is an agreement between both entities that speak to planning, talks about zoning, permitting, comprehensive planning, and this agreement has been in place since, I believe, 1996. And there has been attempts to try to resolve some of the issues, especially considering statutes have changed and the relationship and the activities on the port property has changed. So the port would like to bring the council up to speed with some of the areas that they would like to focus on, and obviously the city has areas that it too would like to discuss as part of a interlocal agreement. So there would be a intro to that, and then a discussion, and then obviously moving forward to come up with some solutions. The next item is stormwater drainage. Right now, there is stormwater infrastructure that the city has that is on the port's property, and that infrastructure is significantly aged and has provided for some challenge to port activities. To when the stormwater infrastructure fails, the port at their cost have gone in there and remedied and cured the issues. But the concerns that the port has articulated is that it is not just addressing the stormwater that is developed or comes from the port site, it's actually providing treatment and collecting water for the area adjacent to the port. And so they do pay a stormwater fee for the purposes of complying with what the ordinance calls for and treating that. And so they want to have a discussion with the board about, what's the long-term solution? Because in the event that we are to, like we do with most of our infrastructure, manage and plan and prepare for that, the level of speed in which we move to go through some of these projects provides for some concern and some opportunities for delay for the port operation. So they want to bring that to your attention and then see where the board wants to go with regards to potentially making some changes and modifications. And it's important for the public to also know that the port is a sovereign government entity, so the relationship is profoundly different than any relationship with a corporate entity or what have you. And then the other item is Peanut Island. Palm Beach County has a relationship, a longstanding relationship with the Port of Palm Beach, and the area that the county is maintaining or operating for the port is set to expire in 2024, and this speaks specifically to the facilities on Peanut Island. There has been no activity that has occurred on the site for some time now, and the facilities, the Kennedy Bunker, et cetera, have been closed from the public because there is significant renovations that need to occur on that facility. In the opportunities I've had to address the port commissioners, I've expressed that the city of Riviera Beach has an interest and is willing to work with the port to see about the feasibility of the city of Riviera Beach assisting in the historical renovations of the site and reopening that particular attraction to the community at large. There is some significant restrictions that are on that property as it is in unincorporated Palm Beach County, but we want to have the discussion with the board to find out what's the board's appetite with regards to moving forward with expending some monies and putting some time and effort to secure grants, which we're pretty confident that we would be able to secure grants to offset some of the capital costs and reopen that facility that has a lot of historical significance. So in closing, the port is really looking for an opportunity to sit down with the board, briefly discuss the issues, find out philosophically where both boards stand, and then move forward with directing the respective staffs to bring back some other options to consider on these particular issues. And there may be issues that the board brings up as part of that conversation that ends up spurring off to additional conversation. So it is going to be a meeting that is going to be an introductory meeting, but there will be subsequent meetings and committees that would be formulated as a result of these items to bring back some public policy items to consider from both parties. And staff stands prepared to answer any questions, and we also do have Ken from the Port of Palm Beach that's here as well.
All right, do we have any public comment cards?
Madam Chair, we do not have any public comment cards. The acceptance of public comment cards on this item is now closed.
Okay, board?
And Madam Chair, they actually curried over the
Yeah, that,
packet today for us.
okay,
Yeah.
from the port,
Yes.
right, okay. Any questions or comments? I know, Mr. Lawson, I know you wanted to have an opportunity for us to come together prior to us meeting on the 30th. You just wanted to kind of get this little overview.
Get the
And
overview.
now hearing that it's just an introductory type meeting, that is a little more.
So now that we know it's an introduction meeting, they're just going to give us an overview. Now, there's not going to be much discussion or back and forth, so we can at least take this package and know that we have some reading material. I did have a question for Mr. Evans and the board in reference to Peanut Island and our direction or approach. And I know they're going to be looking for, last time we spoke to them was some type of lease agreement or some type of outline on what we're going to be doing with the island. So maybe having that discussion briefly, just to give us an idea of where we'd like to go with the island, to possibly have that approach when we get there on Monday for this meeting.
And Councilman, also, one of the things that we have on our workshop on the October 5th is the discussion on Peanut Island to get into more specificities on the proposal or the options that we want to proffer to the port. Right now, the county is waiting and seeing what the city of Riviera Beach is going to do with regards to the Peanut Island situation. They have said that they don't want to get in a situation where two government entities are pursuing this particular activity or opportunity. So they are waiting to see what the city puts forward. When we have the conversation with the port, you'll see that there is roughly probably about $4 to $5 million worth of capital investment that would have to occur to bring the facility back into, I would say, pristine conditions to where you can see and open up for the public's ability to access the sites. To be able to address some of the cosmetic things, you're probably looking at about $2.5 million, but the numbers obviously would need to be refreshed as construction costs change, and then you have to utilize a barge to get the construction material over there, so you can anticipate construction costs would be a little bit higher. The opportunities for grant funding associated with this is pretty large, and certainly having a site that has so many so much historical significance to our community and to the nation for that matter, poses a lot of opportunities for us to see both public and private sector funding come in to see this particular project come back to fruition. We also see this parcel as an opportunity to have a showpiece facility and park in our community. The other side of it is there is some deed restrictions that the county would have to provide some clarity to the city, and we would have to work with them because it is an unincorporated county, and there is some stipulations that the county would definitely not want to change and modify from the standpoint that they do realize that other county residents want to see the island maintain its existing activities, that it's not something where it becomes problematic, where there's a bunch of noise and activities, and we can be, we're conscientious of that. But the other side, staff sees the opportunity to blend your marina operations and activities as well as your banquet center to where you can have a wedding on the island and you don't have to travel to the Caribbean and then utilize the banquet hall for the reception. So there is a litany of different opportunities that we think can help generate some revenue. You would also need to probably secure a curator to run the site and create a nonprofit entity, could be the Friends of Riviera Beach Parks or what have you, to assist in the management of the activities there. Now, one of the conversations that have come up about the feasibility of a restaurant and those types of things, and I think there is an opportunity for a restaurant to support the operations that are happening there as a secondary, but not something where you would see a standalone restaurant that you would see in other areas of Palm Beach County because of the significant deed restrictions that are on the property and provides for some challenges. So in the event that the board wanted to see some changes to the stipulations, it would require some legislative action from the county, but also we can anticipate that other government entities, other residents throughout the county would then lobby county commissioners to not change some of the stipulations. And we would be able to speak on some more specificities on that when we do have our retreat, as we have the documents and we can provide more specifics. But holistically, we think that there's some great opportunities, and it's something that, from a board standpoint, that we wanted to make sure that you consider. The port is also looking for a property to see to expand their operation as a lay-down yard, and we do have some properties that obviously the board can take a look at when it comes to a contractor, some horse trading, for lack of better terms, that may happen. But the contract is set to expire in 2024. If there's no action, it then is an automatic renewal. From our standpoint, if this is a direction that the board wishes to proceed forward with, I would say that we start writing grants immediately as soon as a relationship and an agreement is saying that we would take on the responsibility effective 2024 when the expiration of the county contract happens. So we have that lead time to where we are actively pursuing grant funding because it will be challenging that in 2024, who knows what those construction costs would be. So we would want direction from the board if you wanted to proceed forward in that direction, that we actively assign this particular initiative to somebody in the manager's office, that their job is to manage this program and this process as we move forward.
Will we have those deed restrictions for October 5th meeting?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, anyone else?
Madam Chair, I think that we should move forward with this, sign it to someone in the city manager's office, and bring back the information that we need to know about.
Anyone else? And are there any other questions? I agree with your suggestion. Are there any other comments or anything regarding all of the items, the 3 items for the Port of Palm Beach? All questioned out down there, everybody? Getting kind of quiet here. All right, so you have your direction for the Port of Palm Beach information. All right, discussion by city manager.
Madam Chair, I do not have nothing at this time.
Discussion by city attorney.
No, ma'am.
City council committee reports. Statements by the mayor and city council. Anybody?
None, Madam Chair.
All right, with that being said, we stand adjourned.
Hey, Lawson.